So Apple's WWDC is coming up very soon, and it got me thinking about the improvements that I would like to see, specifically as a developer. In case you don't know, my name's Sean, and I make an app called Sofa, which helps you to be more intentional with your downtime. And just to give a little context about this video, there's a ton of things that I could talk about that I would like to see improved for, developers' experience and tooling and features and stuff like that. But I'm really focused on the things that I have personally experienced and had a little bit of friction with over the past, couple months or a year or so, maybe even longer for some. And I know that depending on which developer you talk to, you will get different answers here. So I'm sure if someone's going to write a comment that I go, oh yeah, I should have mentioned that one because that one's annoying. But anyway, I like to keep things positive, but these are the things that I want to see improved. So let's jump in and get started. All right, so number one is to remove app review from TestFlight builds. Now, I need to give a little bit of context here. So whenever you release an update to the App Store for your app, whether it's a small update, large update, whatever, it has to be reviewed by Apple, and this is called app review. And they check against like certain policy guidelines and make sure that there's, no issues, it's not going to crash and all that kind of stuff. Excuse me. But anyway, that's fine. Whatever. They do app review. It's all good. There's a lot of benefits to it. They also do app review for TestFlight builds. Now, TestFlight is a service/app where developers can beta test versions of their app before they're released with beta testers. It's a great product, great service, all that kind of stuff, and I use it all the time. Okay, so here's how it works. So let's say that I have a version 4.0 that I want to start beta testing with customers. So I have to submit that to TestFlight, and then Apple has to review that build, and that's individual for iOS, the Mac, and for Vision OS. And Apple has to review that build, and that can take a couple hours, a couple days. Usually it's pretty quick, but sometimes it can take a little bit of time. And then once the review is done, then people can start beta testing it. And if I release 100 extra builds after that, but I don't change the version number, then Apple does not review those builds. They just go directly to beta testers. And if you're kind of following this, you can see where the issues are. So that leads you to think, okay, so if they only review it for the first one, why review it at all, right? Because if the point of app review is to prevent anything malicious and make sure that things are being, correctly created and developed and all that stuff, why is it only done on the first one? And nobody knows except people at Apple. And my argument is that there should not be app review for TestFlight, specifically because if you think about the workflow, and I'll talk about my workflow for TestFlight and how I've run into this issue a few times over the past few months. So essentially, when I'm doing betas, I'm always doing a beta at some point, right? Like there's always open betas. And sometimes between those builds and those versions, there's nothing really urgent. I'm just working on stuff and I have something new and I want people to start beta testing it. But sometimes there are very serious bugs that pop up and I need to address those bugs as fast as possible. Like I have to stop doing everything else and focus on that. And the workflow is because it's not always possible for me as one developer to reproduce a certain crash or issue that someone's having. So I need to do a little bit of detective work, put together solutions, test them, and then ideally have them beta test it with the people who are experiencing things. Once things are resolved, then I can push out a proper update to the App Store. But I've had a couple instances where major issue going on and I'm trying to fix it and I'm waiting for app review to review a beta build, sometimes for like a couple days. And there's nothing I can do. And obviously you can say, well, it's my fault because I wrote the bug and all that stuff, which is true. But there's no benefit here. Like I'm not sure where the safety is here to have app review at all for TestFlight, because it just ends up getting in the way of the workflow. And especially when I'm trying to address very serious bugs very quickly. it ends up just being like a major hurdle. And I would love to see that go away. I don't know if it will. This is probably like my number one, which is probably why it's number one. But please, Apple, take that away. All right, number two is to share email addresses of TestFlight users. So depending on how you have set up your privacy settings on your iPhone or iPad or Mac or something, you may or may not share like analytics information with developers. And that's fine. Whatever you want to do is all good. Doesn't bother me. But I think that when you're beta testing and you're part of TestFlight for some app, some of those restrictions should be reduced, and specifically email addresses. So let me explain the scenario here. I have had many times where a beta tester using TestFlight will send me feedback via like the built-in feedback mechanism, and I can see the feedback. And sometimes they share screenshots and they write messages to me, and frequently in those messages is a question like, hey, should I do this? Should I do that? What's your guidance? All that stuff. But if they have their privacy settings in a certain way, I cannot see their email address, which means I have no way of responding to this person who is actually asking for a response. And maybe the solution is for Apple to have like a better communication system within TestFlight. I actually don't want that. I'd rather just use email. But it's happened enough where it's just kind of annoying, and there's nothing I could do about it. Like, these people are asking for help. I literally cannot help them. And this is where I think privacy goes a little too far, because I feel like if you're beta testing, you need to give up a little bit of that so that, you can share information, you can share bugs and crashes and feedback and kind of have this back and forth. So I don't know. I'd like to see that change too. All right, number 3, App Store Connect performance needs to be improved. So App Store Connect is Apple's website and kind of like platform for managing your app. So this is where you like set up and release new builds and releases. You add screenshots for your app. You set up pricing for your app. You can see analytics. You manage TestFlight through it, all that kind of stuff. You can do some of the things through Xcode as well, but not everything. And the performance, like the entire website is so slow, like so slow. Like every button you click on is insanely slow. And I have tons of feedback about like individual portions of the product and how you do things, especially on like setting pricing and discounts, which is insane. But performance itself is horrific, and it's like borderline Jira level. I'm sorry to any like Jira fans out there, but like I think Jira is one of the worst pieces of software I've ever personally used. I despise it. I find it to be so unpleasant in so many ways. And App Store Connect is like right up there with it. All right, number 4 is to add LLMs or AI or whatever you want to call it to Xcode. This is probably going to happen if we think about it. So I'm not really surprised if this happens. But essentially, I've been using, many of these AI tools for work and for writing code and feedback and stuff like that. I'll get into all that stuff in a different video. And I think regardless of what your opinion is about these things, they're here and they're not going away. So we have to figure out how to use these in a good way and how to use them in the best ways and integrate them properly into the tools we're using. So I think the experience like right now is, I'm switching context constantly, right? Whether I'm using Claude, like Claude Code, or whether I'm using Cursor or Gemini and all these different things, like, because they all have different strengths and weaknesses. But to have that more integrated with Xcode would be really nice. And to be able to choose which model I want to use within Xcode too. Like, I have a feeling Apple's just going to do like, you can just use Apple's model, but like, I want to pick the model I want to use. Like that would be like cherry on top. All right, number 5 is to have on-device models with like an API that I can use within the app. So, at some point, it seems inevitable at this point that AI in some form will be integrated into like most software, or maybe all software. And I've been thinking a lot about like, how does this make sense within Sofa? And I have a lot of ideas, big ones, small ones, all those kinds of things. But one of the major barriers to me doing that stuff is cost. Because if I use like OpenAI's API or Anthropic or, Gemini, whatever, I'm kind of setting myself up for potentially a very high cost on a, monthly basis, yearly basis, whatever. And I may not always need like super high-end stuff. And to be able to utilize on-device models that really, they don't cost from a dollar value, they don't cost anything, they just cost energy on the device. That would be really nice. And I feel like Apple's going to do this too. They just have to figure out like, what are the models and what do they do? And are they good enough for certain things? So, but I'd like to see that. All right, number 6 is to improve developer documentation. I've been developing Sofa. I've been working on Sofa since 2015, developing it since 2017. And during that whole experience, the number of times that I've gone to Apple's documentation and found a satisfactory answer has been like pretty low. Usually it's a lot, it used to be piecing a lot of stuff together with Google searches. Now, starting to integrate these AI tools and stuff like that. But Apple's documentation at this point, in the size of the company and like the stage that they're at, like they're not this scrappy little company anymore. They're one of the wealthiest companies of all time. There's no good excuse for this. Like, they need better documentation. And when I think about like, I use RevenueCat, and for Sofa's website, I use astro.js. Both of the developer documentation for those products is incredible. Like, really good, really explains and shows you how to do this. And even recently, I've been looking at Claude Code's documentation. It's great, like really good. And I'm like, these companies are so much smaller. And I guess it's an incentives thing. Like, they need developers to get on board, where Apple maybe feels like, you'll get there. We don't need this to be good. But like, man, their documentation really, it needs some love, like for real. So please fix it. All right, number 7 is to allow developers to refund customers. Okay, so I'm going to try and talk about this one without getting angry. But right now, if someone emails me and asks for a refund to their subscription to Sofa, I am not able to do that. I have to, say, you have to go through Apple. There's a very specific process. To me, this is insane, because they are both my customer and Apple's customer. I don't know if Apple sees it that way. Apple will probably say that they're Apple's customer, but I think they're both our customers. And the fact that I can't properly do customer support and give refunds is just nuts. And I would say it's like hostile towards the customers and towards me, like as a developer. Like, I'm getting the email, dealing with a problem, or, customers, not satisfied or something like that. So give me the tools to do it, right? Like, and honestly, if you think about it, if I want to give a refund, that's not Apple's business. Well, what do they care? They'll get refunded whatever money I made, whatever the cut was anyway. So to me, this is just like this is like beyond ridiculous that like that developers cannot refund customers. They have to go through Apple. And I think this gets to a broader point, which I'm going to get to next, is like, whose customer is this, right? Like, and I think Apple would say they're our customer, right? But anyway, it's nuts. All right, number 8 is improve developer sentiment. Now, this one is like, I think depending on the developer you talk to, you'll get slightly different answers. And my experience overall with Apple as a developer has been very good. like very positive. There's stuff I run into, and I've talked about some of these things that are just like really, really annoying, maybe a little bit annoying, or like, yeah, that could be better or whatever. But like overall, my experience as a developer has been great and excellent. And, as an indie developer, Apple does a lot for you, right? Like the App Store is this amazing marketplace where people feel confident to spend money and to have their credit card ready and stuff like that. Like, and even if you think about some of the things I'm asking for, I'm not asking for like, oh, I want to see credit card numbers and all that. I don't want any of that stuff. I'm looking for a little more control over my business. And anyway, when we get to that with the developer sentiment stuff, I think for me, the biggest issue is, like, if I kind of had to like boil all this stuff down, is if you asked Apple for the people who use and pay for Sofa, like the product that I make, if you ask Apple whose customers are they, I think like Apple's like company position would be that they're Apple's customers. And that's where I think things are a little lost. And I would say that they're both our customers, right? Like both myself and other developers and Apple are both bringing value to this experience for the customer. And you can't really have one without the other. Like Apple's not going to make all these apps themselves, right? And developers aren't going to make all these apps without certain incentives, and Apple provides like really great infrastructure for all this stuff. And I think that's really what it comes down to for me. Is like, it doesn't feel like Apple views developers as partners with this stuff, but more like us developers should just be grateful and thankful that Apple even allows us to do this, which is like so stupid. And it's like, come on, Apple, you guys are a $1 trillion company, multi-trillion-dollar company. I'm just an indie developer. Like, relax. It's a little nuts. But anyway, there's a lot more I could talk about there, but I'm not gonna bore everyone. And I know different developers will have different like specific things that drive them bananas. So I'd be curious to hear what people think. But I do have two ideas for what I think Apple could do like immediately to start kind of moving the sentiment in a better direction. These aren't going to like fully solve everything, but like towards a better direction. All right. So first one is, I think they should just reduce App Store fees to 10% across the board. And maybe there's like an exception for games. I don't know. But right now, so I'm in the small business program, so I don't pay 30% fee. I pay a 15% fee. So for every subscription, I keep 85%. Apple gets 15%. And I think Apple should just like simplify all this stuff and reduce it to 10% across the board to just show like some goodwill here, to show that like, yes, developers, you have added a ton of value to this this ecosystem and to these products and stuff like that. Like, the whole like there's an app for that those whole campaigns, like those were all third-party developers doing that stuff. And this would be a very simple and easy way to do it. I know, it's easy to spend their money, but like, come on, they can afford it. And if you think about it, a 5% increase in revenue for me is not nothing, right? Especially for us smaller developers, like it's meaningful. So I would say do that. All right, the next one is to just kind of give in and remove the anti-steering rules. And I think like legally they lost this, but they might be appealing it or something. I don't know all the legal stuff. But essentially the anti-steering rule was that if you provided a way to subscribe or buy your product, your piece of software on your website, like outside of the App Store, you were not allowed to tell customers that within the app. So you couldn't say like, oh, to get a cheaper price, go to the website, whatever. And that's always been an insane rule and always been I think like, I don't think I've ever heard any person say like, yeah, that makes sense, right? It was always nuts. So, and Apple has like, it appears they have legally lost that. So you can do that now. But I saw that they're appealing it or whatever, but like they should just give up. Like just stop doing that. Like give in. Like that. I think that's the other thing is like Apple like doesn't give an inch with this stuff. And they just seem so like, it's like, guys, don't you have enough? Like you can't, like you need more than what you have. Like, good Lord. It's like a super rich person who's like not generous at all, and they just want to keep getting richer. You're just like, you don't have enough. Like like 5 houses is not enough. Like you need 5 more. It's like, relax. Come on. Anyway, I'm getting off topic here. Those are the 2 things I think that Apple could do immediately to start kind of shifting the developer sentiment in a more positive direction. Again, it's not going to fix everything, but like, I feel like they need to do something big to change the tone, because the tone right now is not good. And those 2 things could change the tone, I think, pretty significantly. All right. So hopefully we see some of these changes this year. Some, please. I really hope the TestFlight one, and I really hope the refund one, because, oh man, those things drive me nuts. Those are the ones that like get me like angry. Most of these are more like, yeah, make this, do this better, right? But some of them like really, really piss me off. But anyway, hopefully we see some of these changes. But I'd be curious to hear what some of yours are. Obviously, I didn't talk about any like iOS features or macOS features or something. I feel like I do have things I'd like to see, but like as a developer, I have so much like work on my to-do list anyway. I don't need any new stuff. So I'm like, yeah, Apple, just fix these things. Don't worry about new features right now. So, but anyway, thank you for watching. Appreciate it. And I'll see you next time. Bye.